Hands on the car. Now.
Gloria Holloway turned slowly.
Officer, this is my car. My keys are right here.
People like you don't drive cars like this.
Please. I left the hospital this morning.
I said, hands on the hood. Now.
Phones rose all around them, a dozen glowing screens, recording. Nobody stepped forward. Somewhere, someone laughed. A registration card in her purse that carried her own name. She felt the car key bite into her closed fist. One call. That was all she would ask for. None of them knew the man stepping from the next car. None knew he would reach this handcuffed woman and call her Mom. Have you ever been judged guilty before you said a word? 3 hours earlier, the morning had been gentle.
Gloria Holloway signed her discharge papers at Fairmont County Hospital. A nurse wheeled her to the door. The surgeon had said the same thing twice. Rest, walk slowly, no stress on the heart. She drove herself to the Greenfield market for one small thing. Fresh peaches. Her late husband's favorite, and tomorrow would have been their anniversary. Parking the silver Mercedes took her 2 careful minutes. She left it gleaming under the noon sun and went inside, leaning on her cane the whole way. Across the lot, a woman watched from a parked SUV. Karen Whitfield lived 4 houses down from Gloria and had never once said hello. She had complained about Gloria's garden. She had complained about Gloria's visitors. Now she stared at the old black woman climbing out of a luxury car, and something ugly turned over in her chest. She lifted her phone and dialed 911. "Yes, I'd like to report a theft in progress." Her voice was calm, rehearsed. "There's a black woman breaking into a Mercedes at Greenfield Market. She doesn't belong with a car like that. She might be armed. Please hurry." Every word was a lie. Gloria's key was in her purse. The title was in her name. But the dispatcher heard "armed," and the call changed shape. 2 miles away, Officer Travis Boyd took the radio. 29 years old, 3 years on the force, and hungry to matter. A possible armed theft was the most important thing that had happened to him all week. He flipped on his lights. He did not slow down to ask questions. In his mind, the suspect was already guilty. He had a description: black, female, older. He had a crime: grand theft auto. He had a stage, and an audience would soon gather. Their phones were already in their pockets, waiting. What he did not have was the truth, not a single piece of it. He did not know the woman's full name. He did not know about the stitches over her heart. And he did not know that this woman, if pushed far enough, would make one phone call. A call to a number that could end his career in a single afternoon. The patrol car came in fast. Tires shrieked against the asphalt. Boyd stopped at an angle, door flying open before the engine settled. He stepped out, with one hand already resting on his holster, his jaw set like a man arriving at a war. Gloria had just reached her car. 2 bags of groceries, a small paper sack of peaches on top. She heard the siren and turned, confused, squinting into the light. "Step away from the vehicle," Boyd called. "Hands where I can see them." She blinked. "Officer, is something wrong?" "I said step away from the vehicle, now." "This is my car. I was only loading my groceries." "Ma'am, I won't tell you again." Gloria set the bags down slowly on the ground. Her hands trembled, not from guilt, but from the long mourning and the new stitches under her blouse. She lifted both palms toward the sky. "All right," she said softly. "All right. I'm not doing anything." Boyd circled her, eyes hard. He looked at the car, then at her, then at the car again. A silver Mercedes, polished and gleaming.
An old black woman in a faded cardigan and orthopedic shoes. In his mind, the two did not belong together, and that gap was all the evidence he thought he needed. "Whose car is this?" "Mine. I've owned it 3 years." "Right," he almost laughed. "And I'm the mayor."
A few shoppers had slowed near the store entrance. One of them lifted a phone, then another. Within moments, the lot was filling with quiet witnesses, and not one of them moved closer. They formed a loose half-circle, the way people gather around an accident. Close enough to see, far enough to stay clean. "Officer," Gloria tried again, her voice patient. "My registration is in my purse. My key is in my purse. If you would only let me show you—" "Don't reach for anything. I only want to show you. I said don't reach." She froze. Her hand hovered near the strap of her bag, then dropped to her side. The peaches sat in their paper sack, bright and absurd, in the middle of all this. Boyd keyed his shoulder radio without taking his eyes off her. "Dispatch, I've got the suspect on scene. Older female, matches the description. Vehicle present, possibly armed, standing by." Suspect. Gloria repeated the word, and it landed strange in her ears. Armed. "Son, I'm 68 years old. I came from the hospital this morning. The only thing in that bag is peaches and my heart medicine." "I'm not your son." The words came sharp, and something behind them was sharper still. He stepped closer and kicked her cane. It clattered across the pavement and spun under the car beside hers, far out of reach. Gloria swayed. Without the cane, her balance was a fragile thing. She caught herself on the warm hood and breathed through a flash of pain that bloomed across her chest and down her left arm. "Please," she whispered. "I had heart surgery 6 days ago. I cannot stand long." "Hands on the hood. Spread your feet." "Officer, I am telling you the God's honest truth." "Everybody says that." A young man near the carts took a step forward. He wore a delivery uniform and had kind, worried eyes. "Hey, man, she's old. Just check her ID. It'll take you 10 seconds. Boyd turned his head slowly. "Stay back, or you're next. Mind your business." The young man stopped. He didn't leave, but he didn't come closer either. He lifted his phone higher instead, and the small red dot of a live stream blinked on. A counter beside it began to climb. 40 viewers, then 100, then more. Gloria placed her hands flat on the hood. The metal burned her palms. She bowed her head, and a strand of gray hair fell loose across her face. "My name is on the title," she said, to the car, to herself, to anyone who would listen. "Gloria Holloway, look it up. Please, just run the plate. It will tell you everything." Boyd didn't run the plate. He pulled the cuffs from his belt. The ratchet sound cut through the parking lot. That hard, mechanical click everyone recognizes from 100 videos. The crowd leaned in. The phones steadied. "You're being detained for suspected vehicle theft," he said. "Hands behind your back." "I have stitches. Please, not behind my back." He took her wrist anyway. He pulled it down and back hard, and the motion bent her forward over the hood. Gloria gasped. A sound left her that she would be ashamed of later, a small, high sound of pain. "Please," she said, "please, you're hurting me." "Stop resisting." "I'm not resisting. I can't move that fast. Stop resisting." He said it loud, for the crowd, for the cameras. It is a phrase that rewrites a scene. Anyone watching the footage later would hear an officer say, "Stop resisting," and a part of them would wonder, just for a second, whether maybe she had. She had not. The first cuff closed. Then he reached for the second wrist and dragged it back to meet the first. The steel snapped shut too tight. It bit into the thin skin over the bone, and a bead of blood welled up, bright against the silver. Gloria made no more sounds. She simply closed her eyes. A second patrol car eased into the lot. Officer Lisa Bennett stepped out, younger, quieter, and took in the scene with a flicker of unease across her face. An old woman bent over a hood. Blood. A cane lying abandoned. Bennett opened her mouth, then glanced at Boyd's expression and said nothing. She took up a position near the crowd, hands on her belt, and became one more person who watched. Gloria's purse had slipped off her shoulder during the struggle. It hit the pavement and spilled. A lipstick rolled. A pill bottle from the hospital pharmacy skittered out. And there, in plain view, face up on the asphalt, lay the laminated registration card. Gloria Holloway. The make of the car. The plate. Her address. Her name in clear black letters, matching the woman in handcuffs in every possible way. The young man with the phone saw it first. "Yo, her name's right there. The papers are right there, man. You don't even have to look hard." Boyd glanced down. He saw it too. For one long second, he had a choice. He could pick up the card. He could read it. He could feel the cold drop in the stomach that comes when a person realizes they have made a terrible mistake. And he could begin, even clumsily, to make it right. Instead, he nudged the card aside with the toe of his boot. He slid it under the car into the shadow, the same way her cane had gone. "That doesn't prove anything," he said. "Could be stolen too. People steal the paperwork right along with the car." A murmur moved through the crowd. Some of it was discomfort. Some of it, sickeningly, was amusement. Someone laughed, a bright, careless sound that made the whole thing feel like a show put on for their afternoon. Gloria felt that laugh more than she felt the cuffs. She had marched in 1968, a girl of 10 holding her mother's hand. She had been turned away from lunch counters. She had buried a husband and raised a son alone on the wages of a woman who cleaned office buildings after dark, mopping marble floors in towers she could never afford to live near. She had spent 6 decades proving, over and over, in 1,000 small humiliations, that she was a person who belonged. And here, in a sunny parking lot, with peaches spilled at her feet, a stranger had decided in 90 seconds that none of it counted for anything. "You think a woman like me can't own a car like this," she said quietly. Boyd snorted. "I think this car costs more than you'll see in your whole life." "You don't know my life. I know your type." "My type." She turned the words over. "And what type is that?" He didn't answer. He took her by the arm and turned her around to face the crowd, the way a man displays a catch. The phones drank it in. An old woman in handcuffs, blood at her wrist, swaying without her cane, her chest heaving with the effort of staying upright on her own feet. "Walk," he said. She tried. Her knees buckled. "I can't," she breathed. "My heart. Please, I need to sit down." "You can sit in the car. Walk." "I'm going to fall." She did fall. Her legs gave out beneath her, and because her hands were bound behind her, she could not catch herself. She went down onto the asphalt, onto her knees, hard. The impact jolted up through her body and tore a cry from her throat that echoed off the storefront glass. And Boyd, instead of helping her up, looked at the crowd and shook his head, as if she had disappointed him. "Classic," he said. "They always do this. Fake an injury, make a scene, play to the cameras." He crouched near her ear, his voice dropping low, below where the microphones could reach. "Get up. Nobody here believes you." But the cameras caught enough. They caught a 68-year-old woman on her knees in a parking lot. They caught the blood at her wrist, They caught the spilled pills and the abandoned cane and the registration card glowing white in the shadow beneath the car. They caught the peaches, scattered and bruised, rolling one by one toward the storm drain. What they did not catch was the truth of who she was. Not yet. Near the SUV at the edge of the lot, Karen Whitfield watched with her arms folded, and the smallest smile touched the corner of her mouth. She had not expected it to work this well. She had only wanted the old woman gone. She did not yet understand what she had set in motion, or how completely it would turn back on her. A woman near the front pressed a hand to her mouth. "Someone should do something," she whispered. But she said it to her friend, not to the officer, and she did not move an inch. That is how it works. Everyone waits for someone, and so no one becomes the someone. Gloria knelt there and breathed. In, out. The surgeon's voice came back to her. No stress on the heart. She almost laughed at that. She thought about her son, the boy she had raised on those midnight wages. She thought about the promise she had made to herself 30 years ago, knees aching on a cold office floor, that her child would grow up into a world a little fairer than the one she had been handed. She had believed it. Most days, she still did. "Officer," she said, and her voice was steadier now, steadier than it had any right to be. "I would like to make a phone call." Boyd laughed. "You'll get your call at the station." "No," she said. "I'd like to make it now. One call. That is all I am asking of you." Something in her tone made a few people glance up from their screens. It was not the voice of a guilty woman. It was not even the voice of a frightened one anymore. It was calm. It was certain. It was the voice of someone who knew exactly which number she would dial and exactly what would happen when the other end picked up. Boyd didn't hear any of that. He was already hauling her to her feet, already steering her toward the patrol car, already rehearsing the report that would make him sound careful and brave. He had no idea that the most important call of his career was about to be made about him. The crowd kept filming, and 2 miles away, on the top floor of the county building, behind a door marked with a title and a badge, a phone began to ring. Boyd opened the rear door of the patrol car and pushed Gloria toward it. "Watch your head," he said, though he gave her no time to. He folded her into the back seat with a hand on her shoulder and shut the door. The car had been baking in the sun all morning. The air inside was thick and hot, and it pressed against her chest like a second pair of hands. "Please," she said through the glass, "it's too hot in here. My heart. I need air." He didn't answer. He turned his back and faced the crowd as if the matter were closed. The delivery man with the kind eyes moved along the edge of the lot, keeping his phone trained on the scene. "I got all of it," he called, half to the officer and half to the 1,000 strangers watching his live stream. "Everybody saw. The papers were right there. You kicked them under the car." "Turn that off," Boyd said. "It's a public lot. I don't have to." "Turn it off, or I'll find a reason to take it." The young man's jaw tightened, but his hand shook. He lowered the phone an inch, then thought of the old woman in the back seat and lifted it again. It was the bravest thing in that parking lot, and it was still only a phone, held by a man too far away to stop anything. The crowd had begun to thin. Whatever they had come to see, they had seen it. A few drifted back toward the store. A few kept filming. But the energy had changed from anger to something worse, a kind of restless boredom, the feeling of people who know something is wrong and have already decided it is not their problem. That is the cruelest part of these moments. Not the one cruel man, the 40 quiet ones. Inside the car, Gloria felt the heat climb. Sweat broke across her forehead and ran into her eyes. The pain in her chest was no longer a flash. It had settled in and begun to spread, a slow tightening, a hand closing into a fist. Her breath came shorter. The edges of the world went soft and gray. "Officer," she called, weaker now. "Officer, please. I think something is wrong. My chest." Boyd glanced back through the window. He saw a gray-faced woman slumped against the seat, and he saw, because he had already decided what he would see, a performance. "She's fine," he said to Bennett. "They always do this. The second the cuffs go on, suddenly they're dying. It's a script. I've seen it 20 times. Bennett looked at the window. She had not seen it 20 times. She had been on the force 8 months, and what she saw did not look like a script. It looked like an old woman in genuine distress. "Travis," she said quietly, "she doesn't look good. She looks like someone who got caught. Her color's off. We should at least—" "Bennett." He said her name like a door closing. "I've got seniority on this scene. Stand down." And she did. That was the thing she would think about for a long time afterward, lying awake at night. She had felt it, the wrongness, sitting cold in her stomach, and when the moment came to act on it, she had folded her hands and stood down, because a louder man told her to. Her silence joined all the other silences in that lot, and together they made a wall around Gloria Holloway, sealing her in. The isolation was complete now. Her cane was under a car. Her papers were in shadow. Her one defender stood 20 feet away behind a phone. Her medicine had rolled across the asphalt. And the one officer with a conscience had just been ordered to bury it. Gloria pressed her cheek against the hot window and closed her eyes. She did not pray for rescue. She had stopped expecting rescue from strangers a long time ago. Instead, in the dark behind her eyes, she did the only thing left to a person who has been stripped of everything else. She remembered who she was. She was Gloria Holloway. She had a name, even if this man would not read it. She had a son who loved her. She had a number, 10 digits she knew better than her own birthday, and at the other end of those digits was the one person on this earth who could walk into any room in this county and be obeyed. She opened her eyes. "I want my phone call," she said, louder this time, clear. "I know my rights. I am owed one phone call, and I want it now." Boyd didn't even turn. "At the station. I may not make it to the station." She said it plainly, without drama, and that was what made it land. "If you will not let me call, then every person here is watching you deny medical help and a phone call to a woman having a heart attack. Look at the cameras, son. Look at how many of them there are." For the first time, Boyd hesitated. Not from mercy, from arithmetic. The phones were still up. The live stream counter, though he couldn't see it, had passed 11,000. It was Bennett who moved. She crossed to the car before Boyd could stop her, opened the door, and crouched down to Gloria's level. Up close, the older woman's distress was undeniable. The sweat, the gray skin, the shallow breath. "Ma'am," Bennett said gently, "is there someone we should call? Family? A lawyer?" Gloria turned her head. Her eyes, even now, were steady and kind. "Yes," she whispered, "there is." "What's the number?" Gloria told her. 10 digits, slow and certain. Bennett dialed it into her own phone, because Gloria's hands were still cuffed behind her. She did not recognize the number. She pressed call and held the phone to the old woman's ear, leaning in close. It rang once. Behind them, Boyd scoffed. Who's she calling? Her social worker? It rang twice. The delivery man stepped closer, phone still recording, sensing, without knowing why, that the air had shifted. It rang a third time, and then, on the other end, a line connected. A man's voice answered, warm and busy, the voice of someone who had 100 things to do that afternoon. Holloway? Gloria closed her eyes, and for the first time all day, her own voice broke. Nathan, she said. Baby, it's your mother. I need you to come. Bennett's face changed because she knew that name. Everyone on the force knew that name. It was on the letterhead of every memo she received. It was on the door of the top floor office. It was the name they said with straightened backs and lowered voices. Holloway. She turned slowly toward Boyd, the phone still pressed to the old woman's ear, and the color drained out of her face the same way it had drained out of Gloria's. Travis, she said softly. Travis. What's her last name? But Boyd wasn't listening. He was watching the far end of the parking lot, where the afternoon light had begun to flash blue and red, where not one car, but 3 were turning in off the main road, fast, in formation, the way a convoy moves when the most important person in the county is inside it. The 3 vehicles stopped in a tight arc across the lot, blocking the exit. Doors opened. Officers stepped out, but they did not move like men responding to a theft. They moved like an escort, fanning out, clearing space, their eyes already sweeping the scene for one thing only: the woman at the center of it. From the lead car, a man emerged. He was tall, broad through the shoulders, in a pressed uniform with silver on the collar. He wore no expression at first, only the focused calm of a man who has been told something he refuses to believe until he sees it. The crowd parted for him without being asked. Even the air seemed to step aside. He scanned the lot once. The spilled groceries, the cane under the car, the patrol vehicle with its back door open. And then he saw her. For 1 second, Chief Nathan Holloway did not move at all. His face, which had stayed so still, came apart slowly, the way a wall cracks before it falls. He saw the blood on his mother's wrist. He saw the gray of her skin. He saw the handcuffs. Mom. The word came out of him cracked and small, a sound no one expected from a man like that. And then he was running. He crossed the parking lot in a few long strides, and he dropped. He went straight down onto both knees on the hot asphalt beside her, the silver on his collar flashing, and he took her face in his hands as if she were made of glass. Mom, Mom, I'm here. I'm here. Look at me. Nathan, she breathed. You came. Of course I came. His voice shook. Who did this? Who put these on you? He didn't wait for an answer. He reached behind her, found the cuffs, and his hands stopped. They were too tight. They had cut her. A man does not forget the moment he sees his mother bleeding from a wound someone chose to give her. Key, he said, and his voice had changed entirely. It was flat now and cold, and it carried across the silent lot like a blade. Whose prisoner is this? I want the key. Now. Nobody moved. The key, he said again. Officer Bennett fumbled at her belt, crossed over, and unlocked the cuffs with trembling hands. They came away from Gloria's wrists, and the marks beneath them were deep and red and beaded with blood. Nathan caught her hands gently in his and held them, and the crowd, all those phones, caught the exact moment the chief of the county police pressed his mother's wounded wrists
to his lips. The parking lot had gone utterly silent.
11,000 people watching the live stream had gone silent too, if a live stream can go silent. The comments slowing, then stopping, then filling all at once with the same dawning horror. Boyd stood frozen 10 feet away. His mind was working very fast and arriving nowhere good. He had run the suspect's description through every assumption he owned, and not one of those assumptions had included this. He opened his mouth. "Sir, I was responding to a call. Armed theft. I didn't—" Nathan rose to his feet. He did it slowly, and the slowness was worse than any sudden movement could have been. He turned, and he looked at Officer Travis Boyd, and for a long moment he said nothing at all. He simply looked at him, the way you look at something you are trying to understand. "Her name," Nathan said quietly, "is Gloria Holloway." Boyd swallowed. "Sir, she raised me by herself, in a one-bedroom apartment on Crescent Street. Do you know how she did that?" Boyd said nothing. "She cleaned offices. At night. After working a day job. She mopped the marble lobbies of buildings downtown so that I could have shoes that fit and books for school. She came home at 2 a.m. with her back bent and her hands cracked, and she never once let me see her cry." The crowd did not breathe. "That car," Nathan went on, and his voice almost broke again. "The one you decided she couldn't possibly own. I bought it for her. 2 years ago, the first thing I did when I made chief was put my mother in a car nobody could ever look down on. I told her, 'You spent 40 years invisible to people like that. Never again.'" He looked at the Mercedes, at the registration card still lying in the shadow beneath it. "Never again," he repeated. "That's what I told her. And today she couldn't even buy peaches without a man deciding she was a criminal because of the color of her skin and the price of her car." "Sir, the description matched the description." Nathan's eyes came back to him. "Older, black, female. That was the description. And it was enough for you. You didn't run the plate. You didn't read the registration that was lying at your feet. A man told me you kicked it under the car." Boyd's face had gone the color of paper. "There's a live stream," Nathan said. 11,000 people. And body cameras. Yours and Officer Bennett's. So in about an hour, I am going to watch every second of what happened here. Every word you said to my mother. And I think you already know what I'm going to see." It was then that Gloria spoke. "Nathan." He turned at once, back to his knees beside her, the chief vanishing and the sun returning in the space of a single word. "Don't," she said softly. "Don't let me see you become him. Help me up first. My peaches are all over the ground." A sound went through the crowd that was half a laugh and half a sob. Nathan let out a breath, and something in his shoulders loosened. He slid an arm beneath hers and lifted her, slowly, carefully, taking all of her weight. "Somebody get her cane," he said, "and call the paramedics. She had heart surgery 6 days ago, and she's been kneeling on this pavement in the sun." His voice sharpened on the last words, and 3 officers moved at once. The delivery man with the kind eyes darted forward, retrieved the cane from under the car, and pressed it into Gloria's free hand. "Here, ma'am, I got it." She looked at him, really looked at him, and squeezed his arm. "You're the one who kept talking," she said, "when everyone else went quiet. I heard you. Thank you, baby." The young man's eyes filled, and he nodded, unable to speak. Nathan caught the exchange. He turned to the crowd, to all the lifted phones. "This young man," he said, pointing, was the only person in this parking lot who said something. Dozens of you watched. He spoke. Remember that the next time you tell yourself there was nothing you could do. Then he turned back to Boyd, and his voice dropped to something almost gentle, which was the most frightening thing of all. Officer Boyd, hand your weapon and your badge to Officer Bennett. You are relieved of duty, effective now, pending a full investigation into excessive force, false detention, and the assault of a 68-year-old woman recovering from heart surgery. Boyd's hands shook as he unclipped his badge. Sir, please. I have a family. I made a mistake, but...
A mistake? Nathan held his gaze. My mother made a mistake once. She trusted that if she worked hard enough and lived honestly enough, the world would see her as a person. You're the proof of what that mistake costs. He took the badge. He held it for a moment in his palm, this small piece of metal that had given one man the power to put an old woman on her knees.
Far at the edge of the lot, Karen Whitfield was backing toward her SUV, very quietly, hoping no one remembered who had made the call. But the delivery man's camera had caught her too, and it had caught her smile. Don't let that woman leave, Nathan said, without even raising his voice. The one by the gray SUV, she placed the call. I'd like to know what she told dispatch about a woman she's never spoken to in her life. Two officers moved toward Karen, her face crumpled. And in the center of it all, Gloria Holloway stood on her own 2 feet at last, leaning on her cane and her son, Peaches at her feet, the sun warm on her face, and looked out at the crowd that had watched her fall and said nothing. She was not smiling, but she was standing. The paramedics arrived within 4 minutes. They eased Gloria onto a gurney despite her protests, wrapped her bleeding wrist, and clipped a monitor to her finger. The numbers were not good. Her blood pressure had spiked, her heart rate was ragged, and the lead medic's jaw tightened when he saw the depth of the cuff marks. How long was she restrained like this? He asked. 20 minutes, Bennett said quietly. Maybe more. The medic looked at Boyd. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. Nathan stayed at his mother's side, one hand around hers, but his attention had turned outward now, to the parking lot that had become a courtroom without walls. Dozens of phones. A live stream past 20,000. 2 body cameras. And in the middle of it, the man who had caused all of it, standing, badgeless and pale. Officer Boyd, Nathan said, before the medics take my mother, I want you to hear something while these cameras are still rolling. Not because I'm chief, because every person here deserves to understand exactly what happened. He held up the registration card. He had picked it up from beneath the car himself. This was on the ground, face up. Her name, her plate, her address. It took me 3 seconds to read it. You stood over it for 20 minutes and called it a fake. Why? Boyd's mouth worked. The call said armed theft. I was following the call. The call, Nathan turned. Where is the woman who made the call? 2 officers walked Karen Whitfield forward. She had stopped trying to leave. Her arms were crossed tight over her chest, and her chin was lifted in the particular way of a person who has decided that the best defense is to act offended. I don't see what I did wrong, she said before anyone asked. I saw something suspicious and I reported it. That's my right as a citizen. You told dispatch she was armed, Nathan said. Was she armed? I thought she might be. You told dispatch she was breaking into the car. Did you see her break into anything? Karen's mouth opened and closed. She lives 4 doors down from you, Nathan continued, reading from a note an officer had handed him.
You filed 3 complaints against her in 2 years about her garden, about her guests, and today you watched a woman you've resented for years get out of a nicer car than yours, and you picked up the phone, and you lied to the police about a weapon. I didn't. It wasn't like that.
Filing a false police report is a crime, Nathan said, especially one that claims a weapon, especially one that puts a 68-year-old woman in handcuffs and on her knees. You'll be giving a full statement at the station, and the recording of your 911 call will be part of it. Karen's offended posture collapsed all at once. She began to cry, the loud, frightened crying of someone who never expected to face a single consequence.
Nathan turned back to Boyd, and his voice lost its courtroom edge and became something quieter, harder, more personal. Here is what's going to happen. Internal Affairs will review every second of footage from this lot. You'll be investigated for excessive force, unlawful detention, and denial of medical care. That's not me being your chief. That's the law being the law. The same law you swore to serve.
Sir, please. Boyd's voice cracked. I've got 2 kids. This is going to end me.
You keep saying that. Nathan studied him. You said it to me. You never once said it to her. You never said, "I'm sorry," to the woman bleeding on the ground. You're sorry now, but you're sorry because of what it costs you, not because of what you did. And that's the whole problem, son. That's the entire problem in 2 sentences. The word son hung in the air. He had used Boyd's own dismissal, turned gently back on him, and everyone heard it. For a moment, Boyd seemed about to argue. Then his shoulders dropped, and whatever defense he had been building simply fell apart. He looked, for the first time, at the gurney, at the old woman lying on it with a bandage on her wrist and an oxygen line under her nose. "Ma'am," he said. His voice was barely there. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." Gloria turned her head on the gurney. The crowd went still to hear her. For a long moment, she only looked at him, and there was no hatred in her face, which was somehow more powerful than hatred would have been. "I believe that you're frightened," she said. "I don't think you're sorry yet. Sorry takes longer. Sorry is something you do, not something you say in a parking lot when the cameras are on." She paused, breathing through the oxygen. "But I hope you get there. I truly do. Because a man who never gets there does this again to someone who doesn't have a son with a badge." The sentence landed on the entire crowd at once, because that was the truth underneath all of it. Gloria Holloway had been saved, in the end, by a phone number. By the fact that her son happened to be the most powerful officer in the county. And every person watching understood in that instant the cold thing she was pointing at. How many Glorias did not have that number? How many were carried away in the back of a hot car while everyone filmed and no one called? Because there was no one to call. Nathan heard it too. He looked at his mother, and he nodded slowly, as if she had just handed him an assignment. "You're right," he said, "and I'm going to do something about it." The medics lifted the gurney. Gloria reached out and caught her son's sleeve. "The peaches," she said. He almost laughed through the tightness in his throat. "I'll get your peaches, Mom." And as they wheeled her toward the ambulance, the chief of the county police bent down in the middle of a crowded parking lot in front of 20,000 strangers and gathered up the spilled, bruised peaches one by one and placed them in their paper sack and carried them after his mother like the most important evidence in the world. Gloria spent 3 days in the hospital, her heart
the doctors said, had been pushed dangerously hard, but it held. She was tougher than her chart suggested. She had always been. The video spread the way these things do. By the second day, it had been viewed 9 million times. News crews parked outside the county building. The calls for action wrote themselves, and the demands came fast and loud. Fire him. Charge him. Make an example.
Nathan came to her bedside on the third evening, still in uniform, and sat in the plastic chair beside her like he had as a boy. "They want me to throw the book at him," he said. "Some of them want his head on a wall. I could do it. Easily. After what he did to you, no one would blink." Gloria was quiet for a while. "And what would that fix?" she finally asked. "It would feel like justice." Feeling like justice and being justice aren't always the same thing. She took his hand. "If you destroy that one man, the next Travis Boyd watches it on the news and learns one lesson. Don't get caught with the wrong old woman. That's all. He won't learn don't do it. He'll learn don't do it to someone who matters." Nathan looked at her. "Then what do you want?" She told him. She did not ask for money. She did not ask for Boyd's ruin, though he would face the law on his own merits and lose his job through the proper channels. What she asked for was bigger and harder and slower than revenge. She asked for cameras that could not be turned off on every officer, recording at every stop. She asked for a rule that no detention could proceed until an officer had actually checked the registration or the ID in front of them. She asked for training, real training, that put officers in a room with the people they so often misread, until the reflex to assume the worst could be unlearned. And she asked for one more thing: a name, a program. "Call it whatever sounds official," she said. "But I'll tell you what it's really for. It's for every person who gets stopped and doesn't have a son with a badge to call. They're the ones this is about, not me. I was lucky. I want to build something for the people who aren't." 6 weeks later, the county announced the Holloway Standard: mandatory body cameras, always on during any stop, a required verification step before any detention, and a community review board with ordinary citizens on it that could examine footage and demand answers. The delivery driver who had refused to stop filming, a young man named Cole Hartman, was the first civilian member appointed to the board. Travis Boyd was not sent to prison in the end, though he pleaded to lesser charges and lost his certification. He could never wear a badge again. But before his case closed, Gloria did something no one expected. She asked to meet him. They sat across a table in a quiet room. No cameras this time. She did not lecture him. She told him about Crescent Street and the marble floors and the shoes that fit and the son who grew up to be a man people listened to. She told him she had been 10 years old, holding her mother's hand, the first time a man in a uniform looked at her like she was a problem to be removed. "I've been afraid of that look my whole life," she said. "You gave it to me in a parking lot when I was 68. I am too old to be afraid anymore. So I'm going to tell you the truth instead. You weren't born seeing me that way. Somebody taught you. And anything taught can be unlearned if you have the courage to sit in the discomfort of it." Boyd wept. It was not the frightened weeping of the parking lot. It was something quieter and slower, and it looked, finally, like the beginning of sorry. Gloria stood, gathered her cane, and paused at the door. "My anniversary was the day you arrested me," she said. "I never did get my peaches home." She almost smiled. My son brought me new ones. He brings me peaches every week now. Funny, the things that come out of a terrible day. Take care of yourself, Mr. Boyd.
And she walked out on her own 2 feet. A year later, Gloria Holloway stood at the front of a training room, not in handcuffs, at a podium. Every new officer in the county hears her story on their first day. She tells it in her own voice. She shows them the photo of the registration card lying in the shadow and asks one question. What would you have done?
The Holloway Standard has been adopted by 4 neighboring counties. Cole still serves on the review board. Karen Whitfield completed her sentence and moved away. Travis Boyd writes to her twice a year, and she writes back. She still drives the silver Mercedes. She still buys peaches every week. And she is never questioned for it again.
If this story moved you, tell me in the comments. Have you ever watched something wrong and stayed silent? Share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories like Gloria's. I almost didn't tell this one because the part that stays with me isn't the badge or the convoy or the moment he called her mom. It's the 40 people who stood there filming and waited for someone else to be brave. I've been one of them, quiet when I should have spoken. So here's what Gloria left me with. She got her justice because she had a number to call. Most people don't. The real work isn't cheering when the powerful son finally shows up. It's being the one voice in the parking lot before he ever arrives. Be that voice. Somebody out there is waiting for it.